Hey guys, this is Zach here back in another video, and this time we're taking a look at Necromolds. So I actually first heard about this on a Facebook ad. This is the first time I've ever got like a Facebook ad that actually like appealed to me. So this is the game that is currently on Kickstarter right now. And as the time of me recording this, there is 2 days left in Kickstarter, so if you think this is awesome, go check out the Kickstarter. It is amazing. It's already made its goal, it's already well past its goal. And right now we're just hitting all the crazy stretch goals. So go check it out, link in the description. But Clint, the designer of this game, actually did send this to me to show off to you guys. And just a kind of disclaimer, everything you see here is a prototype. I think he actually called it the Garage Kit Edition, or Garage Sale Edition or something. So everything here is very much a prototype. All of these books you're going to see are actually 3D printed. You can kind of tell that they're 3D printed. All of the board is prototype, the dice are just stickered, rings are 3D printed. Everything's everything's prototype. The final stuff is going to be all injection molded, plastic, you know, all great quality stuff, which is why the Kickstarter is happening. So what this game is this is a war game. So war games are things like Warhammer, the Lord of the Rings miniatures game, Bolt Action, if you've heard of that. If you've ever seen a bunch of little plastic models, plastic or metal models on a table being moved across the table in little groups and a bunch of dice rolled, that's a war game. I've always really enjoyed war games, but it's kind of one of those things where if you play a war game, that's kind of all you can play. So most of those big war games are kind of what you would call a lifestyle game, where basically that is your one hobby and that's all you do. Because you have to buy all of these models, you have to build them yourself, paint them yourself, make a battlefield, make all the terrain and everything, and then learn usually a very hefty rulebook on how to actually play the game, and be able to find someone who's also done all of those things and set up a time to play a 2 to 3 hour game. This takes all of that, shrinks it way down to a manageable 15-20 minute game that you can play over and over again, and in my opinion is so much fun. So what is Necromolds? Necromolds are these little books. Everything in this is super inspired of 90s kind of monster vibe. Monster in my pocket, creepy crawlers, all of that kind of stuff, and I absolutely love it. So a Necromold is this book here. You can see this is Series 1, and this is Mud Mumps. It's a Forsaken trait, we'll get into that way later. You can see out there it's number 1 on the spine, and on the back it has all the stats to play the monster battle game. And then when you open it inside, you can see the actual molds to make your monsters. And the way you make your monsters is the best part about this game. You can use any kind of clay, modeling clay, so, you know, potentially like some dough that you play with, if you get what I'm saying. The game will come with its own dough, so you don't have to worry about that. And you take a little piece out, roll it into a ball, put it in the middle of the mold, just kind of like that. You don't have to be like super neat about it. And then you just close the book. And like I said, these are 3D printed, so I'm kind of being gentle with it, but the real ones will be kid-proof and everything like that. And, you know, adult kid-proof. So you just squeeze the mold until it's all the way together. Open it up. Kind of wiggle it out. And remove the excess. And what you have is you have a miniature to play a war game with. And it actually looks really good. So you can see he's got all the details. There's his eyes, he's got the hands holding 2 axes, he has his weird little like clay back, and they all have a little base on the bottom of them, so you just pop them on the board, and you make an army with clay. And it's just, that's the coolest part about this game. And the way you balance the game is each person picks a number of spellbooks. I think I've seen 3 and 4 thrown around. I don't know if there's a hard limit on it yet. But basically, your point system, and most like big war games, you agree on like 2,000 points or something like that. and you have to like build an army with all these points, and you have hundreds and hundreds of models. In this game, you just both start with the same amount of clay. So it comes with 2 3-ounce containers of clay, and that's your points for the game. So the better the monster, the more clay it demands and takes to actually put onto the board. So mud bumps are pretty tiny, they don't take a lot of clay, so gameplay-wise, they're not very great. They got 1 in all their stats, and they don't do anything crazy. But when you go look at something like Insectomite, which is one of my favorite ones, you can see he has a giant mold, so he takes a lot of clay, and he takes a lot of clay because he has much better stats, he has a cool special ability, and he can attack farther. They also have a little number up here. This isn't a strict point cost or anything like that, it's kind of just a rough estimate of how much clay it takes. So like the 2 little mud bumps only take 6, but he takes 19, so you can... Basically, he takes 3 times as much clay as a mud bump. But I'm just going to make him as I'm kind of explaining more of the game. So you each have your own color clay. So the ones I have here are green and purple, which really fit the theme and the aesthetic, and I love it. So I'm just going to put this in here. And so when the game starts, you're going to have your 3 to 4 spellbooks. And you're going to make just as many monsters as you can, however you want, with all of your clay. So for instance, I can make like 6 mud bumps and 1 insectomite and 2 grave ghouls. It all depends on how much clay I have. And you can see I didn't do a super great job. He's got some base missing there, so we can just plop this over there and just make it again. So this is super easy. I've played this game with 4 different people now, and this is so much fun to do, just to have a little spell book and just to make your monsters. See, there you go. And just pull this off. And it's important to actually get as much off of the model as you can. So you can see how awesome Insectomite looks. He looks like rightly terrifying. He's got a little spider on his back, and you can see he's much bigger than the mud bumps, so you can see why he's better in the game, because he costs so much more clay. So one of the things that's going to be included with, I think, every backer now, because the stretch goal was met. So before I get into that, this is the measuring tool. I'll get into that in a second, but this is the deluxe measuring tool. So when you're making these little minis, this deluxe measuring tool has a little poker on the end. So you can see like Insectomite has a little spot between his legs. You can use that to poke out that little hole so you can actually see his legs are separate now. See, just like that. And you have a little bit more clay to add. And then on the other side it has a very dull, kid-safe blade you can actually use to trim the excess off here, just like you would on a real mini, to make it smooth and make it look a lot better. I'm doing a terrible job, but you get the idea. And the reason I bring that up is because something I didn't realize until I started playing this game with other people is 2 of my friends were very, very meticulous about making their monsters. They wanted it to be super perfect. They were cutting off all the extra clay and making it look so nice. And because they did that, they actually had more clay left over to keep making more minis with. So the better you build your little monsters, the more clay you'll have to make more monsters. Now, it's not a huge thing. Like, you can maybe get 1 more like mud bumps out of it, but you're not going to be able to like make these so great you can make 2 more insectomites or anything. That's not going to happen. So I have 7 different Necromolds here to show off to you guys right now. I believe 10 have been unlocked on the Kickstarter so far, which is amazing, and all those other ones look so cool, especially the new ones they just showed off. So before I get into how to actually play the game, I'm going to show you all these guys in a second, don't worry, but the base way to get the game is called the Battle Box. When you get that, you get these 3 Necromolds here. You get the mud bumps, the grave ghoul, and the insectomite. You also get 3 cards that are just this back part, so you can actually share the mold, so you don't have to, fight over who gets who. So you can share the molds as you're playing the game. You get 8 command dice, these big D6s with the special symbols. You get 8 combat dice. In this prototype, these are D12s. They're normally going to be D10s, like these here. So you get 8 black combat dice, and you'll get 8 D8 range dice. Again, these are D10s. In the real game, they'll be D8s. You'll get a bunch of little gems, which are used in the game. You get 2 of the measuring tools. You get all of this terrain back here, which is just little cardboard on a little plastic stand. And again, this is prototype. These don't really fit too well, but the real ones will fit a lot better. And all this artwork is like heavy metal album cover artwork, and I love it. So you get all these terrain pieces, and then you get the actual board itself, which I'll kind of pick up and show you. The board is one of my favorite things about this. So it sets up the area for you, so you don't have to like measure out with measuring tape or anything. But the board is kind of like a Where's Waldo type thing. Like everywhere you look, there's something going on. And it's just this crazy medieval, you know, like 80s heavy metal artwork. Like there's a big shield up here and all the Necromolds are attacking it. There's going to be lore and everything. He's talked about doing like comic strips and animated things, stuff like that. So there's a lot to get into. So all that comes with the battle box, which is like the starter set with those 3 Necromolds. And then it also comes with these 2 caster rings, which I'll get into these in just a little bit. So all of that for the base game. You also get two different 3 ounces of clay for that battle box. The monster packs come in 2 books, 1 ring, and 3 ounces of clay, so you can play with them right out of the box. You don't have to like get the game. You can just play with the monsters if you want to. And that's how you get the expansions, basically. Alright, so I'm going to make one more with the green clay, I think. Then I'm going to make some more, the other ones with the purple clay, and I'll show you just a couple turns of the game, show you how it works, and see why it's so much fun. So I'm going to tear off a big piece, because this is Grave Goal is another big one, kind of like Insectomite. Plop it in there. And again, these are 3D printed prototypes, so I'm not going super quick, but with the real ones, you'll be able to do it as hard as you can, as quick as you can, not have to be so gentle like I'm doing. Alright, so we can tear off the excess. There you go. That's the Grave Goal. So you can see it's like a walking coffin that's like been animated and has these skulls and skeletons with it. It's so metal. So there's the 3 you get in the main box. Well, you also get another mud bump, so I'll make that one for you. There you go. So the mud bumps are fun because they have 2 different designs you can do. They both take the exact same amount of clay. They both do the same thing in the game. The mud bumps kind of be like your grunt, like foot soldier, so you want a bunch of them. So they have 2 different designs, so you can kind of get some variety in your little army of mud bumps. There you go. There's the other one. He's just got 1 sword, and he's got his little helmet and stuff. And there's the other one with 2 axes, as you can see. I love the little mud bumps. Alright, so there's your guys for the battle box. There's the 4 different designs you get in there. And then for these other 4, I'm just going to use the purple clay just so we have some variety. So next up we have the Lethydra. It's kind of just like walking coral reef with like all these dead fish and I don't know what else. It looks like it smells horrible. That's the way I can describe this thing. It's also one of the biggest ones in the game. It's size 17. And you can see it kind of has like a long base. So that's way too much, but we'll put it in there anyways. And I didn't get enough in the head. There we go. Yeah, and again, these make scary noises because they're 3D printed prototypes, so don't worry about that. There we go. Yeah, I put way too much clay in that one. And you can see the clay peels off really easy. And the 3D printed stuff is actually really fibrous. Like since it has to print, you know, if you've ever seen a 3D printer, it does it line by line by line. So this stuff is kind of really coarse. So the clay kind of sticks to it a little more than it should. So when the actual injection molded toys actually come out, they'll be much easier to pull out of the mold and be a lot cleaner as well. So there is the Lithydra. Looks really cool. You can see a cat hair, 2 cat hairs in there. Yep, that's gonna happen. You can see the anchor on his back too. I love this guy. You can see he has a big base too. So there's Lithydra. Next up we have Vegetoad. It's also one of my favorite ones. He has 2 different sizes actually. So same monster, but the bigger one actually gets a benefit. You can see the large form receives +1 attack. So that's the melee attack up there. So you can make whichever one you want, but the bigger ones actually are a little bit better, but they cost more clay, obviously. So let's make both of these really quick. Right, there we go. And you can see you can actually make both at once if you want to. There we go. Just give it a good squish. And... ooh, that was kind of bad on the little one. I'll redo that one. But we'll pull this off of the big one. And this is one of the freakier ones in my opinion, honestly. Like, scarier than the Grave Ghoul. It's just this weird frog. But he's got like vegetable stalks as eyes. That's like onions, and like the leaves are like coming out of it, but the onions are the eyes. Just really creepy. So you can see it coming out. I always think they're ears. Those are actually his eyes, like stalks coming out of his eyes. And one of the guys on the board is like being shot with carrots. It's kind of like horrible. There's his back. There's the big Vegetoad. And we'll add some more to the little guy to make him a little better. There we go. The little one is also equally terrifying because it has like a Stranger Things, just like flower face. I kind of hate it, and I love it. So there's the Vegetoads. And next up we got Batadactyl, who is what he sounds like. It's like someone tried to make a bat and a pterodactyl at the same time and kind of got mixed up about what should go where. He's also one of the bigger ones. He's size 13. And he's basically, game-wise, he's kind of like just a giant turret. He kind of just wants to sit there and shoot a bunch. So put some in. You might need a little bit more. There you go. Just like that. Alright. So get him cleaned up a little bit. There you go, and there is Batadactyl. Super crazy design. There's the bat face. Oh, it's so like 80s, 90s monster, like metal. I love everything about the aesthetic of this game. There's that. And also, once these are injected molded, you'll be able to see the details a little bit better too. So it's another benefit of getting the actual Kickstarter going. The last one is actually my favorite one of this whole bunch, Goregaon. So it's kind of hard to see in this picture in the back, but he's a little dwarf king riding on like a dragon skull that's been animated into like a little golem. Yeah. His stats are really good in the game, but he has a really cool ability. He's the only one that can come back after he just gets destroyed in the game. I'll show you that in a little bit. So... you can see he has 2. He starts as the big guy. When the big guy dies, he actually comes back as the little dwarf that's riding on top. That's such a cool concept, and I love it. So we'll make the big guy, and I'll show you the little guy later. There you go. So there's his back. And there's the front of him, like the big dragon skull, and you can kind of see the little dwarf guy just sitting on top riding him. I love this design so much. So you can see I made 5 different monsters with my 3 ounces of clay. I still have a little bit left, so I could probably have enough to actually make one more Vegetoad. So you can see how you kind of like want to strategically pick which monster to make. Like normally what I like to do is make a bunch of little guys. So if I'm playing with Vegetoads, I'll make a bunch of little guys and then have just 1 or 2 of the bigger guys. So I have like a little army of small guys and a couple of big guys to help them out. Alright, I've kind of got just a little like hodgepodge setup of what the game might look like. It's a little squished together because my review station's small. But basically, you'll line up all of your monsters on the edge of the board and have your spell books in front of you. You're going to get your 4 command dice, the d6s with the special symbols. You're going to have some other dice just kind of next to you just in case, and the gems off to the side. And when you start the game, you both roll a combat dice with a black one. And whoever rolls higher gets to pick the first terrain piece to go onto the board. So I would pick whichever terrain piece I want, put it on the board however I want to, turn it, whatever. They're just there to block movement in line of sight, so you can't shoot through it or anything like that. So once this player picked, this player would pick. Maybe they want to pick this one. And then the first player would again pick the last one. Get this little house. Something like that. So when you place it, you can't place it closer than the little close section of the measuring tool to one of your figures. So like this one would be too close. I have to put it like out here, as you can see. But as you can see, my review station's tiny, so this is too much, so I'm just going to put these off to the side. But you get the idea. Put these guys back to where they're supposed to go. So the way you determine who goes first in the game, and any round, whoever has the smaller army gets to go first. So you can see green's only got 4, purple has 5 over here. And also really importantly, before you start the game, you have to be sure to put your caster ring on. This one only fits on my pinky because it's a prototype, but there's 2 different versions that come in the starter set. There's a scarab and a little creepy skull snake. So you both pick one of those and put it on your hand. And then you'll both roll your command dice at the same time, and then you assign them to the back of your Necromolds books. So that was a terrible roll. Just for gameplay, for teaching's sake, I'm going to say that you rolled this instead. So then, let's look at Goregaon here as an example as we're trying to determine where we're going to put these dice. So you can see on the back of the books here, there's these little commands on the bottom. So think of these like slots. Like think of them when you put a ranged attack on here, he has a ranged attack symbol, it kind of just covers that spot and takes up that slot. So that means he can be issued a move command, which is what the feet mean, a ranged attack, which is what the crosshairs mean. He can also have a spell on him. You can see each one of those symbols are on the dice here. Only certain creatures can use spells, and when you put it on there, it'll say what it does. So for instance, Goregaon, as long as he has a spell on him, if he's destroyed, you reclaim the clay and replace with a smaller form. So like I said earlier, he only comes back as Little Dwarf if he has a spell die on him when he's destroyed, so it's really important for him. The other stats they have is their melee attack, their ranged attack, and their defense. They also have a nature, so he's a thrasher, which means these 2 stats are highlighted here, his melee attack and his defense. That's used in the advanced version of the game. There's 3 different ways to play the game. There's basic, intermediate, and advanced, I believe is what they're called. The basic is very much for little kids. All the monsters have the same stats, you're just rolling dice and smashing monsters. And yeah, we'll get to that. Intermediate is basically advanced minus a couple things, and the advanced has all the rules in it. So for instance, if I rolled these 4 dice, I could put a movement die on Goregaon, and a ranged attack die on Goregaon, and that's his 2 slots. I can also put a spell on him if I really want to, but I don't think he's going to get destroyed in the first turn, so I won't worry about that. So I'll assign those to Goregaon. And then Batadactyl here, I'm going to put the spell die on him, which you can see increases his range, or gives him another ranged attack, so it'll let me go to 2. And the star is a wild die, so that means it can be whatever you want. You can put it on a book, and you don't have to decide what it is until you actually activate that book. So I can leave it as that and decide what I want to do later in the turn. And then we rolled these for the green side, so I want the mud bumps to move. And the mud bumps actually have a cool little thing where they can move, and their second slot is an either-or slot. So they can range attack or move more. So you'll have to pick one when you put it on there. So I just want the mud bumps to move twice, so I'll put those 2 on there. I'll give a wild to Insectomite, and I don't really want this magic die, so this is where the gems come in. So when you're assigning dice, if you have a magic die that you don't want to use, you can just discard it, throw it away for the turn, and you get yourself a magic gem. So gems are kind of important, basically like kind of towards the end of the game. When you get a gem, you just put it on your side of the board in a little pool that you make, something like this. And whenever you're rolling dice in the turn, before you roll the dice, you can discard one of those gems to add 1 to your roll. So, really good thing to do is kind of build them up in the beginning, and then once you get towards later turns in the game where you need to make those rolls and win the game, that's when you spend them. And really quick, the last symbol we didn't talk about on these books is the wild symbol. This is maybe getting changed in the final release, because it's kind of confusing. Basically, you can put any die on that wild spot, but by any die, I only mean the movement or ranged attack. You can't put a spell or a wild on that wild spot. It's kind of confusing, he's going to work on that, but that's what that means. Alright, so now we've set our dice. Like I said, green's going first because his army is smaller. So he's going to pick any one of his books, and then activate every die on that book, moving every monster of that type. So for instance, let's get this out of the way. We're going to activate the mud bumps. So when you activate, you kind of take it off the book. So we're going to do his regular short movement. So if we look on the mud bumps book, you can see the movement and the range have little arrows next to them, and that's the range of it. So 1 arrow is short, 2 arrows is medium, and 3 arrows would be long. And so when I'm saying those distances, I'm talking about this measurement tool. So you can see the 1 arrow, this is close, 2 arrows is medium, so this far, and the 3 arrows is far, so the whole bottom of this. So that means the mud bumps are going to move a close distance. So the way you move, if you've ever played a miniatures game, it's just like any other miniatures game. You put your little ruler touching the base of the monster, and you move it all the way to the end of the ruler. Just like that. So then the other mud bump is going to move as well, because he's the same type as the book we're activating. And then we resolve the second die. So now we can move him again, and now he'll move a medium distance. Take that off. And now we switch to the medium side. And move him all the way really close. So the way melee combat in this game works is you have to touch base to base. So the 2 monsters have to touch each other. So he's getting really close, but he can't do anything yet. Once he's activated the book, that's it for his turn. It's going to go to the other player. And he's going to activate Goregaon. So if we take the dice off of him really quick, you can see he has a move medium and a close ranged attack. So we're going to move, and he's going to move medium. So, whoops, this side. We're going to put him right here, and he's going to be able to get all the way up and touch the mud bump here. So as soon as 2 monsters touch, a melee combat happens immediately. And melee combat is super dangerous because no matter what, 1 monster dies in melee combat. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. At least 1 monster dies, sometimes both. So now what we're doing here, when you do a melee combat, the defender is going to roll his dice first. So we're going to look at the mud bumps. The mud bumps have a defense of 1. So that accounts for ranged in melee. So the mud bumps are going to roll 1 combat die. So they roll it first. He got a 7. So that means that Goregaon has to beat a 7 to be able to win this battle. So we look at Goregaon. His melee attack is 2. So what that means is he gets to roll 2 dice whenever he does his melee attack, and he picks the higher number. So he's going to roll 2. Ooh, just barely. He got a 3 and a 9. So that means that he has the higher number, so Goregaon wins the battle. So now the fun part, when you lose a battle, you take your ring and you smash your opponent's monster. Just like this. And I can't tell you how satisfying that is. So you can see, it squashes the monster into your symbol on your ring. So you can see the little snake with the skull face there. And now that clay is going to stay on the board and start clogging up the battlefield. So monsters can't end their move on top of this. They have to go around it to be able to continue moving. So the more monsters that get slain, the more clogged up the battlefield gets and the harder it is to get around. And I love that mechanic. So then that was Goregaon's movement. So now he has a ranged attack. You can see his range is just a close. So for ranged attacks, it's a little bit different. You basically touch the model, and then anything you can touch with the other side of the measuring tool, you can hit. So that's a close attack, so he can hit this mud bumps right here. So ranged attack kind of goes in the opposite way. For a ranged attack, the attacker rolls first, and he's going to roll an orange range die. So he rolled his orange range die, and he got a 3. So now the mud bumps have a defensive 1 like we saw, so they're going to roll their die. He got a 2. That was an unlucky roll. So again, he lost the battle, so he gets smashed. Just like that. Just like that, 2 monsters are dead. So that's Goregaon's turn. So now we go back to this player. And then you go back and forth till you've resolved all the dice on your books. And then after that, you'll both roll new command dice, start a new round. Again, whoever has a smaller army will go first. You just keep going back and forth until only one person has monsters left. And that's how you play the game. That's all the core rules to the game. So the way this game gets a little bit interesting for us older guys is these natures on the monsters. So if we look at Vegetoad and Lethydra here, you can see that both of their ranged attack symbols are highlighted in blue. So what that means is, let's say Insectomite showed up, and he was right here. And Lethydra wants to do a ranged attack on him. When I'm doing a skill, so a ranged attack, if any of my different monsters, so it can't be another Lethydra, it has to be a different type of monster, is within a close range to me, so Lethydra and Vegetoad are close to each other, and it shares the same stat that's highlighted, so Vegetoad and Lethydra both have a highlighted range stack, you get to add 1 to your dice pool. So for instance, if Lethydra wants to do a ranged attack since he's close, he's got 1 on his range, shares a symbol with Vegetoad, so that means he rolls 2 dice. So he would roll them. He got a 7 and a 7, alright. So then Insectomite, you can see, has 2 defense. He's a big guy. And there's no one close to him that shares a symbol with him, a highlighted symbol, so he doesn't get any benefits. He does get to roll 2 combat dice. So then he would roll. He got a 6 and an 11, so he's actually safe. So for ranged attacks, if your opponent rolls higher than you, you just stop the attack. You don't get squashed instead or anything like that. It's only in melee combat if you lose the battle that one of you dies. And the very last thing I'm talking about was those gems I was talking about. So let's say that green player had 2 gems and purple player just had 1 gem here. Let's have Goregaon come in and make an attack on Batadactyl here. So let's say he came in and he got all the way up to him and did a melee attack. Batadactyl likes to lean a little bit. Let's lean him forward into Goregaon. So Batadactyl has a 1 defense, Goregaon has a 1 attack. So when you're doing a melee attack, like I said, the defender rolls first. So let's say that all of our guys are smashed and we're getting close to the end and he really doesn't want Batadactyl to lose. Before I make my defense roll, I can spend 1 gem, so throw it away. And I get to add 1 to whatever I roll. So I would add 1 to this roll. Oh, it's back there. He rolled a 9, so it would make it a 10 instead. So now that the green player has seen this, he gets to choose if he wants to spend any gems before he rolls. So he's going to spend both of his gems to add 2 to what he rolls. And he's going to get a 3. So that'd make it a 5. So it's still not enough to win. So even though he started the attack, he lost the roll, so he gets smashed. And one last thing, let's say Batadactyl attacked this Vegetoad for some reason, even though they're on the same army. And so they both rolled a 9. If it's a tie, both of you get smashed. So no matter what, someone gets smashed in melee combat, so melee combat is very dangerous. You can see that's the other symbol too. It's the little beetle, scarab beetle. Oh, and because I love it so much, let's do a Insectomite on Goregaon attack. Goregaon has 1 defense. He rolled a 4. Insectomite has 2 attack. You roll a 1 and a 7, so Goregaon loses. But let's pretend that Goregaon had a spell die on him. He's going to get smashed like normal. Just like that. But now, since he has a spell, you get to take him back, and you get to make the little dwarf that I was talking about. So you can just break off a little piece. You don't need that much for a little guy. Put it in there. And this actually happens at the end of the turn that the Goregaon got smashed. So now, you've got your little dwarf. The little dwarf, like, king guy that was riding him, and he goes right into the middle of where Goregaon was. So since he's smaller, he won't be in base contact now, so melee combat doesn't happen until you move him again. But now we have a little dwarf guy running around. Alright, and I think that's pretty much everything you need to know how to play Necromolds. I've played this game about 7 or 8 times now. I haven't had a single game go over 20 minutes, and that's what I love about this game. You can just play, finish the game, get all your clay back, make a bunch more monsters, and just play again. There's so much possibility in this game that I just cannot wait to see what they do in the future. The designers talked about making different kinds of games that all use the same system of the Necromolds and the clay and smashing it and all that. So we could do things like maybe have like an RPG, like Dungeons and Dragons style, where the DM like makes all these monsters for you to fight. You could do like tower defense things. One of the Kickstarter goals is a solo mode where it's there's going to be a PDF to download where you play by yourself in a solitary kind of a thing. And this is just a selection of the monsters. All the monsters that have been shown so far are so crazy. There's one that flips, the actual mini flips, and gets different stats based on which way it's flipped, which is so cool. And I could just go on and on about how amazing this game is, and I'm so happy it's already made its Kickstarter goal. Please go check it out because we can get those last little stretch goals in there, because I want to see this game do so well, and I cannot wait to see what they do with it in the future with this game. I know I didn't show every stat and every monster or anything. I'll do videos in the future on each one if you guys are interested in that, and I'll have some actual full gameplay up in the future as well. So that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Like I said, Kickstarter link in the description to go check it out. Any questions or comments, please let me know. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you again, Necromolds, for sending this to me to show off to you guys. And that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a nice day. Seriously, you guys have no idea how satisfying this is.